What is up everybody, my name is Tyler Potts and welcome back to day 58 of 100 Days of Code. And in this video we are going to be going from basic SASS all the way to the advanced stuff using extends, mixins and all that all cool sort of things. So we're going to be trying to get ethic. We're going to be using the SASS command line tool. Like normally I'd use CodeKit or Koala or one of these tools, but I'm going to show you how to use the command line so you can go in and probably create your own SASS compilers and stuff if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it because these, even the free ones, are absolutely amazing and all you need. So first things first, guys, let's crack straight into this. So we need to install SASS, and to install SASS we are going to use the node package manager, and as you can see here, if we run npm install g SASS, I already have this installed, but if you just run this, I need to put sudo because it errors every time. But if we install SASS, it's probably just going to update mine. This will basically run everything you need to actually get SASS up and running, as long as you've got Node.js already installed. Go to node.nodejs.org, I believe it is. Let's have a look. Yep, nodejs.org to download Node. I have tutorials on how to do that in my Node Basics course. So once that's done, that looks like there's loads of errors, but that's actually worked. So if you get all these errors, just ignore it because that's actually worked. Now we can actually run commands like SASS, and then we could say what file we wanted to read. So I've got to open a code, VS Code terminal here, and in here we have a main.sass, which just has these in here. Let's just write some basic code. Let's say body margin 0. Let's just write that. And now let's go to our terminal and run in here SASS, and then we want to give it the root and the path to the SASS file. So in our case it'll be assets/sass/main.sass, and if we run that, as you can see here, it prints out the compiled CSS. Or if we want to actually compile this, we can then give it an output path. So the first path here is the SASS path. The second path is where you want the output to go, so the CSS. So we're going to say assets CSS main.css. Hit enter. And actually, no, it didn't give us anything. But if we go in here and into our CSS, you'll see we have a CSS.map, a main.css.map, and a main.css. And look, it has our body of margin 0. So that's all you need to do. But now you don't want to have to run this every single time to compile your SASS. So you can do something here. So if we at the start here, let's run -- watch, and what this is going to do, it's going to watch our files. So every time we change our SASS file, it will then, or any of our SASS files, it will then rerun this compiler, and it will compile our SASS for us. We can also add something here called no source map, and this is going to basically not include the source map. Don't forget your 2 hyphens at the beginning of that, because I don't like the source map. Well, it's probably really useful, but I don't use it personally. So let's hit that, and as you can see, it's now say watching for changes. So let's just delete the map because we do not want the map. And in here, let's just give it, let's say, a padding of 0. Hit save, and now let's check in our terminal. It says here compiled. So when we hit save, it compiled. If we go over to our main, padding is in there. So that's all you have to do to compile your SASS. You can also use an extension in VS Code called, oh, that's now I get to make extensions. And it is called Live SASS Compiler. This is by Ritwick Day, and he basically created this amazing tool that it basically, you go into your file, your main.sass file, and you just hit watch SASS down here, and it will watch your file for you. You don't have to run any commands or anything. You just hit this button and it works. And it's really good. I really recommend using that over the terminal because it's basically doing what we're doing here, but in a much simpler, well, much better way. For now, I'm going to leave it like this because it's already running and basically it's already set up. So first things first, we want to basically get into what we're going through today. So let's remove this body tag because we don't need that just yet. And as you can see, we have and includes here. So includes slash partials. And that's what we're going through first. So in SASS, you can import. You can import different things. So you can import let's say element blocks. So I've called them blocks in this case. So if we go into our HTML, you'll see we have loads of different elements. We have the header, the main, and then let's say a variable section, a nesting section. And actually, let's move nesting. Nesting will be above variables. I don't know why it's not. So yeah, we have a nesting section, a variable section, a mixing section. Basically, these are my blocks. And each block is going to have its own SASS file, but we're going to include all those. We're not going to have to write main.sass, nesting.sass or CSS, sorry, for each one. We just need this one main.css, because in our main.sass we can import other files. And so SASS understands partials, and how it understands partials is by this underscore element. So you will write an underscore. And then, for example, in here, we'll say nesting.sass. And that is our first little section here, nesting. And that is what we're going to do. So we've got a nesting.sass. And basically, under here, we can say @import. So this is how we get the file. And we will give it a path. So it's underscore blocks / nesting. And we don't need to put in the underscore or anything here. SASS automatically understands what you're doing. So if we put a semicolon, hit save, and you can't see anything, but let's just give this a .nesting background equal to red. Hit save, and as you can see, it already knows, it's already brought through this file into our main.sass. So that is working perfectly. I'm not sure, do we need that there? Yes, so we definitely need it for the first one, just double checking. As you can see, we don't need the SASS, although you can include it if you want to. You don't need the extension, because SASS is smart enough to know that anything you import is going to be, it knows what it's looking for basically, and it's just going to be looking for nesting. So in case, let's say you want to use a SASS instead file instead of a SCSS, but for now we're going to go over just normal SASS. Okay, so nesting isn't the first thing we need to do. Let's actually create, so we have this header section here, but we also need to get some resets in here, right? So let's import something else. So we're going to say @import, and we're going to say reset, because it's not a block, we're going to just add it straight into the SASS root. And we're going to put an underscore reset.sass. And in here, we're going to basically just reset the body. We're going to say margin is equal to 0 pixels. Padding is equal to 0 pixels. Background, we're going to actually set this just not perfectly white, because I don't like it being pure white. I think it just doesn't look, it looks too bright and it hurts my eyes. Sans serif, and there we go. And then we're going to add each section a margin of 15 pixels, 0 pixels. Hit save. Come into here, hit save in here, and there you go. Everything has now got the reset files in. So that is looking good. Another thing we are going to need is basically, well, because we're focusing on the header, we're going to also need a header block. So inside our blocks, let's add a underscore header.sass. And in our main above nesting, we're going to import blocks, and it's going to be the header. If we hit save, it's not going to do anything, but we can basically go through. So as you can see, my header actually, let's add a class to this called header, because it's better because I've got multiple headers in here, it's better to just add an actual class. So header, and this one will be using header underscore title. And you can probably see with our title of our HTML is SASS hero with BEM. And basically, BEM is a, how do I put this? BEM is a way of writing CSS. It's nothing, or SASS, or CSS. Yeah, CSS. It's a way, it's a naming convention for your classes or your things. So how do I explain this? So maybe we should go to the BEM website. So if you go to getbem.com, this is basically explains what it is and how it works. So BEM stands for Block Element Modifier. And my internet doesn't want to work right now because, as you can see, it's taking 10 minutes to load. Yes, so as you can see, BEM stands for Block Element Modifier, and it is a methodology that helps you to create reusable components and code sharing in front-end development. So yeah, it makes it a lot easier to write. So how do we go down? So it's a naming structure, basically. It's how you name stuff. And let's go to the introduction. So a block is the element. So for example, the header. A header is a block. And then let's say you have a header menu item. So that would be the element. So for example, in our example, we have a header and then we have a title, and an element is separated from the header by adding this double underscore here. And that is how an element would work. And then a modifier basically is a flag on a block or an element. Use them to change the appearance or behavior. So this stuff, for example, we have buttons down here. So you can see we've got primary button, secondary button, accent button. So if I go down here, you'll see we have this primary button double modifier. And basically, to declare a modifier in BEM, you write these double hyphens after your block or your modifier or your element, sorry. So we don't have a great example of that. So basically you could also write, for example, if you had this header title, you could also then say hyphen red if you want it to be the color red. So that's how a modifier works. Or you'd say big if you want it to be a big title or something like that. That is how it works. And that's what we're going to be using. So this is why our naming structure looks like this. So we have nesting header, title. And the reason we're using BEM with our SASS is because BEM and SASS go together really well. And SASS has a lot of support for the BEM syntax. And I'll go more into that in a moment. So obviously we've got our header and then we've got this header title. And this is how BEM works. So let's get our header. Or heading, is it header or heading? It's header. And let's give it some style. So we're just going to say display, actually we're going to say height of 60 pixels. We're then going to display as a flex item. We're going to give it a justify content of center and align item center. We're then going to say box shadow. And we're going to give it a box shadow of 0 pixels, 6 pixels, RGBA 0.3. And the reason I'm adding a box shadow is just to bring it off the page. So you can see it, like, it just lifts it off the page a little. And we are going to add a background to this. And the background is going to be my favorite yellow, of course. And the color of the text will be... Actually, you know, we don't need to do that yet. So let's hit save. So there we go. We've now got this little header. And this is where BEM comes in. So, and actually nesting. We're about to go over what nesting is as well. So nesting essentially is what you would, how do I put it? Yeah, nesting is in SASS. So in CSS, you would write, to get your next part, you'd write header, then you'd write header underscore title, and then you'd write your code in here. In SASS, because it has such good BEM support and it also does nesting, I could write in here header underscore title, and that would basically know that I'm referring to this now, and anything inside this block is now referring back to this. But with the BEM syntax, we can now write in here and we can do and underscore title, and this understands that we're doing and. So if we have a class inside of header which has a dot header, so and, that's where the and is. So as you can see here, it shows you here what it will be. It's looking for an element with the header underscore title class. And basically in here we can now write color, and we'll give this a 171717. We'll say the font size is equal to 28 pixels. The font weight will be equal to 700. And then we're going to get our span, and we're going to give this font weight a 300. Hit save, and there's our header. As you can probably tell, I really like using the same style of headers and stuff. I just like the look of it, and that's how I work everything out. And basically, this is how BEM works. So you can use BEM and stuff like this just to do simple things like this. And we're going to go over each element as we go through, like the modifiers and that we'll get to further in this video. So as you can see here, we can also, SASS is so powerful. It has so much like useful things to it. And the first one is nesting. Nesting, as you can see, we can nest our code, our SASS inside each other instead of writing out. So let's say if we was to write, well, we can show you because we've compiled it. So if we go to our main.sass, this is how it's written out here. And it's written out like header title span, and that's how we get all that. That's how we access our different elements. But inside of SASS, again, as you can see, it's a lot more condensed, and it makes more sense, and it looks a bit nicer, and it's easier to read too sometimes. So that is our header. Let's come out of our header. Next up is our nesting section. So let's close the reset too. In index, we're just going to go over how more nesting stuff. So we're going to style up our nesting, and we're going to show off how powerful BEM really is. So we don't have to write out these whole classes. We can just write out sections of each classes, just this end bit basically, with a little and each time to basically say which one we're trying to access. So let's go inside of nesting, and we're going to do and __ header. And we're going to give this a background of 171717. We're then going to go and __ title. So we're getting the nesting __ header __ title. And that is how that works. So you can see how deep you can go with this. You can keep going, but I wouldn't recommend going past 3 elements. So if we hit save, as you can see, it's now added that to our class. And now let's get our article. So we'll say article because there's another class we have on here, and we'll give this a padding of 15 pixels. And there you go, our whole article gets indented by 15 pixels all around. In here we have a title, and the title will have a font size of 20 pixels, a font weight of 700, and a text transform of uppercase because we'd like uppercase. Let's hit save, and there you go, that gets affected. So this is really showing off the power of BEM right now. And under the title, we're going to add a content, because again, we have content. So if we hover over this, VS Code will show us what we're actually referring to, and we're referring to any element with the class of nesting article content. We're going to give it a color of 53565A and a margin of 15 pixels, 0 pixels. Hit save, and that's going to add some spacing in between. Finally, in our nesting section of this tutorial, we're going to access the fur, and we're just going to get here AAA. And there you go. So now that has styled up this, and this is how nesting works with the BEM naming convention, the BEM, how BEM works. So we could also, so this is just one way of doing it. We could also go here, .nesting header. And basically that is still going to do the same thing. Obviously this one now, it means anything, it has to be inside of nesting. It's not just looking for nesting _ header. It's now looking for nesting, an element with the nesting _ header inside of nesting. And we could again do that here. So we can go nesting _ header _ title, and it will do the same thing, but with BEM we can make it a lot more simpler and just use an and the ending of our element. And that is, I think that is quite detailed of how that works. It can get quite confusing, so sometimes you have to be careful of what you write, because you could write too much and it just goes a bit far. But let's move on to the next topic, and that is variables. So like JavaScript, PHP, and pretty much any other programming or scripting language, you can write variables, and now we can do that in SASS. So let's create a element in here called variables.sass next to our reset.sass because we're putting this in a root. It's not a block, this is going to be our overall styles. And the first thing I'm going to go into is primary. So how we create a variable in SASS is we use a $sign like PHP and then give it a name. We then add a semicolon or a colon, and then we give it the value we want it to have. And in this case, we want it to have FFCE00 hex code. We're going to add a secondary, which is going to be our secondary color, and this is going to have 171717. We're then going to hit up an accent, which will have a 00. Sorry, it will have a 00 AF A5, and that's just like a green, which goes well, doesn't go great, but it goes in, it fits in, it works, it doesn't matter. We're also going to have a header size, and this is going to be a font size, so we're going to say 16 pixels. We're then going to say sub size, and we're going to say 20 pixels. Again, title size, and this one is going to be 28 pixels. So we've now got our variables. Let's go add them into our code. So let's create a new block element, and it's going to be underscore variables.sass. Once we've got that, we're going to add in a .variables class. We're then going to have an and_group because that is a part of my markup, and we're going to add a margin of 15 pixels quickly. So this is this section down here. Now, once we have done that, we want to go into this, and we want to go add __ title. And we want to get a title, and we want to give it a font size. But now we're going to use a variable such as title size. Hit save. Oh, and we need to import, of course, we need to import our variables. So variables should go at the top of your document because they basically, obviously how CSS works, and it's the same with SASS, it works from a cascading style sheet, which means it works from top to bottom and anything underneath. So if we had a border, let's say it was a border style of black or a background black, look at me writing perfectly. Background black, and then we had a background white, the white would prevail and win because it's underneath black, and that's kind of how it works. So we have variables up here, we've imported that. Let's also import our block variables and hit save, and there we go. So our section title has now got its size. Let's say we want to add our header or our subtitle, sorry, font size. And we're going to say sub size. Hit save, and there you go, that's been added. And our header, we're going to say font size again, and we had a variable called header_size. Oh. And right now you're probably thinking, why don't you just write, it's a lot easier just to write 16 pixels in there instead of writing a whole variable name. But again, it makes our code more modular. It makes it so if, let's say if we had like loads of different headers and we just wanted to change the size of all of them at once, it means we don't have to go in and change it every single time. So let's say this was all one thing, we'd have to go through and say, we have to change header to 16, we have to change header to 16, oh, this header needs 16. That'll drive you crazy. We basically want to, how our variables work, let's open it back up again, is if we want to change this, so now let's say we want this to actually be 18 pixels, it changed it, and it will change it across the whole website, the variable itself, which is awesome. So let's go back to our header quickly. And in our header, we have the background, but we want to basically say primary. And now you see nothing's changed, but now let's go back to our variables and let's change our primary to be a red. And there you go, it changes. And again, that is how it works. So you can change across the whole website. So anything which was red would then change to be, or anything what was yellow would then change to be red, or whatever color you wanted. And that is how variables work. So let's add in, we have a few more things. We have some buttons with different, as you can see, some modifiers here. So let's get to those. So underneath header, let's use a, I don't know what it's called, I think it's called a pseudo class. And basically this is a way of searching for a class. And this is actually in normal CSS as well. This is a way you could write this out like this as well. And basically this little, so it says we're looking for an element with a class, what starts with, so this little up arrow stands for starts with, and we're going to set it equal to button. So if it starts with button, we're going to add a border of none, an outline of none, a margin of 0, a padding of 15 pixels, and a border radius of 4 pixels. Hit save, and there you go. So that's affected all of our buttons, because even though our buttons just don't have the button class, they start with the button in their class. And now let's access a modifier. So this is the way we can access a modifier. We'll use the and symbol, and we will now say class, and we'll use a $sign, and the $sign stands for at the end of a class. So now we'll say primary. So if our class ends, as you can see, if I hover this, is it going to show it? No. If I hover this one, will it show it? Yes. So as you can see, it's using the ellipsis to show that anything that starts with a button. And now if I hover this one, it shows you anything that is starting with a button and ends with primary, because it's inside this button class. Now in here, let's write background, and let's use our class primary. And let's also go down here and go class $equal, and we're going to say secondary. And this is going to have a background for our secondary. It's also going to have the color of primary, because we need to contrast it. We're going to have a class, again, ends in -accent, and that background will be equal to $accent variable with the color of secondary. Hit save, and there you go. All our buttons have now got their styling. And it's correct. And again, just to show off how variables work, now let's see if we change this. We want our main color now to be red. Let's do that. And as you can see, it's changed it across all elements. So we don't have to go through and change every single element every single time we want to change something up. We can just change it on the fly now with just changing one. Basically, we change it in one place instead of 3 places. And that really speeds up development when it comes around to actually doing development. So that is how variables work. Now we have done variables, the next section is mixins, and this is where it starts getting exciting. So we've just done the basic of SASS, so nesting and including different files and using variables are all quite simple and easy things. Mixin is where it starts getting a bit more complex. So a mixin is like a function, essentially, it's like a JavaScript function. So if, let's say, you want to make everything, you want to run a bunch of different styles, but you don't want to have to rewrite them all out again. You want to add loads of different elements. Let's say you want to add padding, you want to add margin, and you want to add a box shadow. But you just want to run one thing. You don't want to write it out loads of times. You can do that for mixin. So let's get straight into that. Now, underneath, let's just remove this because we don't need it. Let's import a new, well, actually, let's create a mixins file. Again, this will be in our root SASS directory. And we'll just say _mixins.sass. In here, we'll say @mixin. And now, so this is how we define a mixin. We use the @ symbol and write mixin. We then have to give it a name, and this one's going to be called gradient text. So if we now do this and we say background, and we will prefix it with WebKit, and we'll say linear gradient, and we'll pass through our default thing. So we'll say left primary. So we're going to use our variables, and we'll use secondary, and then we're also going to say here WebKit background clip text. We're going to say WebKit text fill color is equal to transparent. Let's hit save, and that's not going to do anything right now, but let's include the mixins. There you go, so mixins now included. Let's also include our mixin. Let's create a block element called _mixins dot sass. Oh, that's not how you spell sass. There we go. And let's include that in here. So underneath variables, we have a mixins block. Let's go back to this because I forgot what we were in. So it's mixin section. So mixins, we've got a header title, and then loads of other different things. So let's actually affect these now. So if we go back into our mixin block, we can now write up here .mixins. That's not it. My spelling, I can't type fast. I can't talk and type at the same time. It's a thing. I don't have these issues normally, I promise. So in mixins, we're going to go and _header. And we're going to set the padding to be 15 pixels and the background to be equal to our accent color. So it's save, and there you go. So that's there. That looks kind of cool, actually. I might start using this color. And we're going to have our title. So now we're going to give this a font size of our variable title size. We're going to give it a font weight of 700. But now let's say we want to include our custom code. So we want to go include, and here's how we include a mixin. We're going to say gradient text. Hit save, parentheses, hit save. And for some reason it's not working. Is that because my thing is being annoying? You know what? It's because we haven't included it correctly, isn't it? So we have mixins.sass and our mixins up here. No, that is included correctly. No, the parentheses didn't help. Why? Okay, guys, time to do some debugging here. So we have a mixins header here. Mixins, and then this will say mixins header. That one worked, we know that. And then our title actually didn't work. This one didn't work. Mixins _title. So this has been put in the wrong place. So there we go. Some little debugging there. A lot of people want me to keep debugging in, so I probably will keep that whole thing. And if we hit save, there we go. As you can see, we've got our gradient text mixed in. And we could do this for loads of different texts. Now let's say we go back to our variables. Yeah, our variables. And we have this title up here. Let's add a mixin, include. And let's say we want it to be our gradient text. There you go. It's been affected by our gradient text. But now let's say we want to actually, what happens if we don't want them to be the same? Let's say we want this one to be like this, but we want our mixins header to have a different color. We can add in some parameters into this. So we can say direction, and we can give this a default value, which we're going to say left. We then can say our color 1, which we can give a default value of primary. And a color 2, again a default value of secondary. So now over here we can give this color 2, color 1, and we'll give this direction. Hit save, and nothing should change. And that's because we've basically set our defaults. But let's go back to our mixins block, and we want to say we want this to come from the right. As you can see, it comes from the right. Now let's say we want our color to be a red. And I want to put this back to the left. So it goes red to black, but then we want our secondary color to be our primary color. So let's hit save, and there you go. So now we've got a completely different gradient. And let's say if we wanted to leave our middle one as default, but if we do that and we hit save, as you can see, it's not going to actually work. So we've just basically set this is now color 1, but we want this to be color 2. So we can just say here, color 2, and that will give our color 2. Although our color 1, let's say actually you want this to be a red, but we don't want to affect, we want our color 1 still be the yellow. And there you go, it has worked. So you can define them as well, so we can mix these up now. We can say color 2, and then we can say our second parameter is our direction, and we want this to be right. And there you go, that works too. So you can define it in however way you want. I recommend sticking to the however you sell it in your actual mixin, but do what you want, it's up to you. And this is one way you could do it. So now let's leave that, let's move on to the next section. So underneath header, we have a section, and we're going to give this a padding of 15 pixels. There we go, so we've brought it in a little. Let's now add a content, and we're going to give it font size of 20 pixels. Hit save, and there we go. Now let's go back to our mixins. Let's close these. Let's go back to our mixins. And let's create a new mixin. So we're going to have a mixin underneath this, and it's going to be called fancy text. And in here we're going to have a variable called outline, and we're going to set this equal to false, or yeah, false. And then we're going to have a shadow, which is also equal to false. And now we can use conditional. So we can use how like JavaScript uses an if statement, we can use a SASS if statement. So we can go at if, and then we add our conditional. So we'll go outline. So we're using this variable up here is equal to true. So if it's equal to true, we can then do something in here, and we're going to say WebKit text stroke, and we're going to set this equal to 1 pixel. We're then going to have a WebKit text stroke color, and we're going to set this equal to our secondary color. We're then going to have a color equal to transparent, and this is basically going to allow us to add in an outline so you can see it. And then we're going to say at if, so if we have a if shadow is equal to true, we're then going to say text shadow, and we're going to give this 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 3 pixels, and we're going to give this our secondary 2. Let's hit save, and actually nothing happens. Again, let's go back to our content and let's include. So we're going to include our mixin, which is called fancy text. And by default, this is going to do nothing because we need to set a variable to true. So we can say here, true. And as you can see, we've basically set it to do outlines. Now we could do true, true, and would also get this shadow. We can set here false, true. And there you go. So now we get normal text, but with a drop shadow. And again, this is just how we can use conditionals inside of SASS. So far we have got through, we ain't even to the end of this yet. And as you can see, SASS is so powerful. We can add in so many different things and change up. Basically, we could add in our variables, we could say use fancy text. And then we can check in our code if we have an outline, which if use fancy text is equal to true, we could then use this. We could do if statements as well inside our text. So we could say at if, and we'll say, let's go add a variable so we can use this. We'll say large type, and we'll say true. Or no, we'll set it to false. And then in here, we'll say if $large underscore type and is equal to true. So if it's equal to true, we'll set our text here to be 32. And then we go, I believe it's at else. Is it at else? Yes. And we'll go, I think it should go onto a new line too. And we'll go font size is equal to 20 pixels. Hit save. And nothing changes. Now let's go into our variables, and let's say actually we want big type. We hit save. As you can see, it gets changed to be big type. So again, you can have loads of functions. You can have a config file where you set what you want your web page to be like, and bam, there you go, you have it. And this is just one way you can do it. There's again, it's so powerful. SASS has so many different features. We're going to set this to false because I don't want that to be large. It kind of blocks the view a little. But that is the next section. So let's close these now. Let's get on to the final section, which is extending a block. So not only can you just include items like a mixin and stuff like that, you can extend a whole block. So you can have some default values for all your blocks and you can extend that. And I'm going to show you how. So let's go into our blocks. Let's create a new file and we'll call this _extend. And then we're going to call it .sass. Oh, why did I add that? All right. And now to create a block, we can basically like a template code of code. We can do $button and we can say border is equal to none. So we're going to set some default styling for our buttons here. So we're going to say outline, none. Font size, we're going to set default 18. Border radius, we're going to say equal to 4. And our cursor equal to pointer. Now on its own, this does nothing. This does absolutely nothing. This won't work. So if we just left it like this wouldn't be rendered enough. This won't even be called inside our main.sass. It won't even be added there. So that means it won't add any bloat to our CSS or anything, just leaving this in here. But now let's say we want to use it. So let's go extend and we're going to give this section we'll give it some padding to space it out, 15 pixels. We need to include this in main. So where our mixing is, let's bring it down and let's call this extend. Hit save and there we go, our padding has been added. All right, now inside our section, we have some buttons, but we basically, oh, we're in the wrong one. We want to basically use our little technique here, our little, I think it's called a pseudo selector, but I'm not sure if that's true. We want to see anything that starts with button, any class that starts with button, we want to add extend from our button. So look at if we now extend from our button, we hit save, our buttons all get that value because they all start with the class of button. So these values all get pulled in here. Now we can actually change them one by one. So let's say we go and class $, oh sorry, it ends with $, hyphen big, and we can say background. We want this one to be equal to primary. We then want to display it as a block and we want to give it a width of 100%. We then want to say margin 15 pixels, 0 pixels, and there we go. Now we've changed one button. So even though we have added in this element, it acts as if it was cascading. So because this gets added in here, now anything we put after this can override the style. So even though we've extended from it, we can then modify it as we continue on. So let's continue on and add a few more. Let's finish up here. So we'll do --small. We're going to add some padding of 5 pixels. So instead of our usual 15 pixels all the way around, we're going to add some 5 and 10. We're going to give this a background of accent and hit save. There you go. Now we've got a slightly smaller button here. And now we have a class $equal to -- circle. And I think that's it. Yep, circle. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say width 75 pixels, height 75 pixels, a border radius of 50%, a background of secondary, and our color can equal to F3. Hit save, and there we go. We've got a little circle, and let's rename that just to say circle so it looks a bit better. There we go. And that is how we extend a class and then modify it based on that. So we can start with a base class for all of our buttons, and then with the modifier, so again a BEM modifier, we can then extend and change the element. So let's go from the top. What did we learn? So we learned how to include files, right? So in our main, we're including loads of different files into our main SASS. And basically, we're using partials SASS will call them partials. I like to call them includes, or if I'm doing block based or component based, this could be underscore components, and we could have components here. To be fair, it could just be components. We don't, for the folder, we don't actually need to give it an underscore, but I decided to for, I don't know, some weird reason. And then we added, and when you add underscore, so it knows that it's a partial, SASS knows partial, and then you give it the name of your file. And that's how you import or include a partial. So that's basically that. We learned how to extend our files. We learned how to use mixins, variables, so our colors. So actually, let's go back to our variables. And I want to use my red for the rest of this page. And there we go. Now we're using red instead of our SASS. And you know what? We do want large type. So let's use our conditional here to just change one thing to true, and bam, there we go. Now we've got large type. You know what? I think the header title should be bigger. I think all titles should be bigger. So let's give this a 26 and this one a 32. Let's hit save, and our titles have grown in size. Again, this is just one example of how powerful SASS can be. It can be way more powerful. You can change, so from a little config file you could set up in SASS, you can change the whole style of your website if you wanted to. You could add conditionals to change the layout. So you could, let's say you had a 4 column grid, you could then do an if statement, say, actually, I just want a 1 column grid, and bam, it will change it into 1 column grid rows. So that is just how powerful it can be. And this is just one example. These are just one. You can imagine using this in an actual site, and the speed you can change the styling of your website. If let's say your client turns around and says, actually, we don't like the yellow, can we have a red? Bam, sorted. It's all changed in one file. Now guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and you have learned something valuable that you can use in the real world. If you have, then smash that like button, because that just shows that you have learned something new from this video and you've enjoyed the video. If you want to see more, then obviously hit that subscribe button. We upload pretty much daily, Monday to Friday. Should be 11 PM, but recently it's been a bit off. I'm due to have my second baby soon, and that may upset the schedule a little bit, but I'll let you know. Over at my Twitter, you can follow me at Tyler_Potts_. The link will be in the description also. If you have any feedback, anything you want to add, anything you want me to go over again, or you just have any questions, drop it in the comment section below, or come and join us over at our Discord server. The link is in the description. Now, without further ado, guys, I thank you all for joining and tuning in. Here are the Patreons. They will go up on screen as soon as I'm finished talking. And thank you for watching, everyone. Peace out.
Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move.